Today's event, the lecturer today is Evan Hadfield, the project lead at Collective Intelligence Project. And Evan focuses on research and development of decision-making technologies, processes, and institutions that expand a group's capacity to construct and cooperate towards shared goals. We will hear from Evan about ways to democratize AI, and questions that will be explored in today's lectures include what approach has and will collective intelligence process has taken or take to understand conflicting values of diverse groups of people, and how we can create technology institutions to become collectively intelligent. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Evan to present. And we'll hear from him in the next 30 to 35 minutes. And at the end, we'll have a floor Q&A session. So for the participants, you're welcome to type anything in the chat, but also welcome to speak up and ask questions directly to Evan at the end. Okay, so Evan.
Great, thank you so much. Let me share my screen. All right. Great. Okay, so, can you hear me okay and see my slide? Okay, sweet. Thank you so much for giving me the time. I'm really excited to talk with Align today about AI and democracy, representing myself on behalf of the Collective Intelligence Project. I'll talk a little bit about the work we do, but I specifically want to talk about how we think we can use transformative artificial intelligence to harness the power of collective intelligence. So here I wanted to go ahead and throw in some pictures of our team so you can kind of get a feel for the people behind collective intelligence, the Collective Intelligence Project. First, I'll go into kind of an intro about our organization, the work we've done, and the work we are doing. And then I really want to dig into what I mean when I say collective intelligence and how that might be relevant to a AI researching community or AI safety community. And then close up with some thoughts about kind of what's coming on the horizon at the intersection of these two technologies. So first off, the Collective Intelligence Project is essentially a research and development lab for new governance models for transformative technology broadly. And of course, right now, what we're primarily thinking about is AI. To be explicit, we believe that in a good world, people fundamentally have agency and the ability to make choices and act self-deterministically in the world. And we believe that concentration of power is usually not helpful for giving people that kind of agency. And I say usually because certainly there are times where large-scale systems with centralization often solve some coordination challenges, and we see effective deployments of kind of concentrations of power in various forms that can be beneficial. But I think for the most part, we do fundamentally believe in decentralized distributed systems to best give people autonomy. However, making good decentralized decisions efficiently is very hard. And now breaking each of those down, we have actually quite good systems for making good decisions. We have pretty good decentralized systems like the free market, and we have systems that can operate very efficiently. Certainly there are ways that some like large-scale entities like governments and corporations can make actions happen in the world very efficiently. But getting all three of those, getting something that is fundamentally good for people, decentralized, and efficient is very, very tricky. But transformative technology is likely to both concentrate power and require difficult decisions that affect a tremendous amount of people. You can think of transformative technology over the last century, from the invention of flight, birth control, the internet, even before the advent of AI. We've been reckoning with technologies that have altered society and even our civilizational trajectory. And at each of these stages of development with certain technologies, typically what happens is the people who initially have access to the technology, who initially develop the technology, are already in positions of power, affluence, access, and therefore are able to perpetuate power. Or even if they maybe have very good intentions, they carry with the technology their own biases and assumptions and values. So our hypothesis is that we actually need many, many more experiments combining collective intelligence and artificial intelligence, the most transformational technology perhaps we've seen ever as a civilization. And I'll come back to kind of getting into what I mean by collective intelligence in a little bit. And we further think that doing these kinds of experiments requires working with real, ordinary people in the real world and existing institutions. So our work does not focus on necessarily just models or simulations. We believe that part of adapting to a society that is able to effectively handle transformative technology requires working with the institutions we have. Even when we want to radically transform them or create better institutions, we have to work with the institutions that we have to most effectively make change. So we've done quite a few experiments. Our organization is fairly new. It's only existed really for the last 2 years. And over the course of last year, we had some high-profile experiments that I'll briefly go over here. At the start of 2023, we began a collaboration with OpenAI that was basically trying to run what we called an alignment assembly, where we were getting input from the US public on what they wanted OpenAI to measure and mitigate when it came to LLM risks. In July of last year, we partnered with the Taiwan Ministry of Digital Affairs, who the minister of that department, Audrey Tang, actually now is working with us. She is no longer part of the ministry. She's doing kind of a global tour advocating for digital innovation in democracy, but works closely with our team now. And in last year, we ran a similar alignment assembly working with Taiwanese citizens to provide input on how Taiwan's election commission should regulate AI. One of probably the bit of work that got the most press, we had I think 2 write-ups in the New York Times for work we did with Anthropic around collective constitutional AI. I'll actually come back to this one right after this to go a little bit deeper on it. But basically in October, we published results from a collaboration with Anthropic, where we trained a model on values gathered from a representative sample of people across the US that was able to form, the model was able to perform as well and even better on quite a few important benchmarks than Anthropic's default model. In October 23, we also worked with the Creative Commons to run a collaboration addressing how they should how the Creative Commons should license work used in AI training. And we also, towards the end of last year and into the beginning of this year, we're working with the newly created UK AI Safety Institute on some public input questions, one of which in particular was how people are likely to respond to increasingly human-like AI models. So I hope at a glance, this sort of like gives you a feel for the work that we do within the space of collective intelligence and artificial intelligence. So I want to go into a little more detail because I'll actually come back to this on the work we did with Anthropic. So with this process, basically Anthropic had a standard model that they trained with a team of experts to address certain safety questions around how the Claude agent should, or sorry, LLM should respond to requests. And we worked with them to run a input process where we got a demographically representative sample of 1,000 people in the United States and asked them what they wanted a Claude model to behave like, and presented very specific questions on how they wanted to see an AI chatbot behave. From that participant selection, we then got input. We did quite a bit of data transformation on that input, trained a new model, and it then evaluated it against the default Anthropic expert trained model. Actually, well, let me move to the next slide here. So to give you a picture of kind of the process that the sample of American citizens were shown, we had this interface. This is a interface tool called Polis that some of you might be familiar with. And what it allows for is you set a question of what, and in this case it was, what rules should our AI follow? And then participants could free-form text, enter whatever they wanted, but then they would also see what other people had submitted, and then they could agree or disagree with other people kind of in real time and asynchronously to get a rich data set that we were then able to look at what kind of statements people generally agreed on or disagreed on. And there was some learning about like different groups of people within that data set who some group, like we identified 2 major groupings of people who by and large agreed on most of the statements, but had some distinctions on a subset of statements. And then we were able to run this model now with a set of rules and guidelines formed from a collection of statements that were gathered from 1,000 American citizens against what was the standard Claude model. And what we found is that the model trained on public input actually, so this graph is, I guess it's not on here, but this is, yeah, it's a bias score, a benchmark basically finding where they run a bunch of statements through the model and see how it responds to particularly bias or stereotype triggering chat prompts. And the model trained on the public's input performed quite a lot better across multiple categories of questions. And furthermore, it actually was able to do this without any loss in quality on some other just general model performance benchmarks. We have since extended this process. So taking the work we did with Anthropic, running through this pipeline where we get a public's input, train a model on some of the input on what they would like, how they would like the model to behave, and then and end up with a model trained on publicly elicited guidelines. We're running that process now with a couple communities. One in Tamil Nadu, which is a state in southern India. We've got a group of AI enthusiasts and researchers and students who are helping us gather input on how they would want a specifically Tamil speaking chatbot to behave. We're also working with Equiano, which is a AI safety lab in Africa, and also the ITS, which is a Institute of Technology and Society based in Brazil, on running a Portuguese specific language process. So I want to kind of go back to this idea of collective intelligence, and the next part of this, I want to talk more about why collective intelligence is significant and meaningful. And before that, it's worth making a distinction on how we talk about collective intelligence, and there is kind of an academic study of collective intelligence. The academic definition is specifically looking at the kind of emergent intelligence from a group of individuals collaborating or coordinating together. And you can see sort of like wisdom of the crowd type phenomena from a group of people sort of working together or submitting even just like independent inputs. Whereas what we mean is this, but more. We see collective intelligence as a group's capacity to set goals and execute on those shared goals to achieve best case shared outcomes. What that means is our definition is explicitly political. We seek a world where collective intelligence is something that can steer collective processes based on collective input for the collective benefit. And there's a lot of types. You can think of this like very broadly. You have kind of collective cognition, the sort of aggregate knowledge and belief systems and goals. In this way, even Wikipedia is a kind of collective cognition. There's collective coordination, where we're synchronizing efforts to address a certain goal. In some ways, you can think of markets as this way. There's also collective cooperation. So given maybe many different goals, we each or even individual communities of individuals having different goals from other communities, we still coordinate, we still cooperate to each achieve our own desired outcomes, but it still requires some level of coordination, cooperation with other groups. And so to that end, really, just about all of like the sort of information and knowledge structures that humanity has created can in some ways be thought of as a collective intelligence. Various kinds of markets, from insurance to even how land gets distributed, to the structures of government, whether it's a nation state, a liberal democracy, even monarchies can represent a kind of collective intelligence of multiple people sort of coordinating together. And in the digital age, certainly we have obviously the internet, a shared network of people sort of collaborating together, and emergent phenomena from these information networks. We believe that the most pressing challenges that we are facing as a sort of human society today are fundamentally collective intelligence challenges. The pandemics, climate change, absolutely, the rise of plutocracies, oligarchies, autocracies, are all catastrophic risks that are somewhat enabled or directly caused by advancing technology. And they require better ways for us to set and execute on shared priorities. And of course, the failures in the systems that we have are most evident when we apply kind of these, like this last slide, these are amazing technologies, that we have markets, that we have insurance, that we have nation states, or incredible technologies. And they are ancient. They have existed for hundreds of years, some of whom, like even thousands of years, you could say. And these ancient technologies are just not keeping pace with the advancing digital technologies. And you can look no further than even just social media platforms, how the challenge of the kind of isolation and toxic environments that are perpetuated by these algorithms that have so little oversight or control, and absolutely our overuse of planetary resources leading to climate change and biodiversity loss. And so we believe that the Collective Intelligence Project is a response to the inevitable need for innovation brought about by the problems that the existing collective intelligence systems are unable to solve or are not solving fast enough. But our core belief is that humans created the current collective intelligence systems to help achieve our collective goals, and therefore we can remake them. And so to that end, with a transformative artificial intelligence, how do we think about the relationship between CI, collective intelligence, and AI? And normally AI is, I think, referred to sort of casually and even amongst like the AI researching community, usually with an analogy to a single human brain. And often when we think of like AI in science fiction, it's this sort of singular unit. But it can also be thought of as like a group of humans, given that most of human knowledge is actually collective, a form of collective intelligence. When you think about it, kind of the structure of AI under the hood is basically collective intelligence. You have neural networks that are trained on collectively created data, and you have neural networks that are also made workable because of the reinforcement learning from human feedback, from a diverse sampling of the human community. And fundamentally, all of AI and machine learning is enabled by the human collective intelligence, the practice of science, the shared knowledge of scientists and ordinary people, researchers, technologists, engineers working together to enable these systems. And I think more and more research is demonstrating with kind of the latest models and coordinating together through multi-agent processes that combining AIs actually gets you significantly better results than sort of single shot working with an individual model at a time. If you've been following the space, there's been quite a few major developments with really powerful networks like Microsoft's AutoGen, this Crew AI. There's many others that are starting to come out, specifically providing tools to enable multi-agent coordination that are able to get you much better results than you would with a single model. And we think that this process of the collective intelligence of people actually makes the AI systems work at their best. And when these systems are working at their best, they can best enable collective intelligence systems, from Twitter's community notes to multi-agent frameworks to the human judgments that train models to be more human-friendly and better aligned in a virtuous spiral that we believe can get us to that intersection point where our CI systems can catch up with technology. And so to that end, I kind of want to close on what I think and we think as CIP is coming around the corner. So one thing we are actively working on is running a kind of collective input process at the global level, where we are trying to design and coordinate a system that can effectively gather what people value and what are future outcomes that people want to see in the world, and get that at a global level. This is something that fundamentally doesn't exist. It's a very hard problem, but something that is critical to certainly AI alignment, but can also be thought of more generally to other forms of collective intelligence, like our government, corporation, organizations getting aligned with a sort of consensus of humanity, or an approximation of that. Another thing that I think is personally very fascinating is starting to explore the world of collective intelligence with AI agents. So what I mean by collective intelligence with agents is the emergent phenomena that we're starting to see from these multi-agent frameworks, where you string together multiple foundation models or LLMs together and give them access to tools to actually make impact in the world. And that can be even just a console. And there's a emergent intelligence that we see in people that is reflected in these agents as they coordinate and deliberate and problem solve. And turns out the wisdom of the crowd from AI is as much of a superpower as it is when we use wisdom of the crowd from people. In fact, I've become more increasingly convinced that our first glimpse at true superintelligence within the next few years will actually be achieved because of the coordination of foundation model agents. What we find is, and that this graphic tries to capture, is you get significant advancements in the capacities from existing models when you have multiple versions of those models, and you even give specific functions, sort of like through a prompt, or even like a fine-tuned model, give it a specific function to play in a team, and then set that team of agents to work on a specific task. You get much greater gains than even like a lower performing model, like a GPT 3.5 can outperform a GPT-4 when you have multiple agents instantiated from a GPT 3.5 model coordinating together to achieve a task. And in this way, this is a kind of transformational technology that I think needs to be thought of beyond just how transformative AI LLMs are today. Thinking in terms of team coordination and how you effectively get agents to work on a task and trust them and have supervision over the task that they are coordinating on will be, I think in the near term, fundamental to the way that work gets done in our society. And so it's a sort of supervision and coordination collaboration problem with teams of AIs rather than sort of trusting tasks to just like a single entity. But there's an opportunity here as well to learn about and experiment with human collective intelligence systems via AI simulations. So one way that, and this kind of futurists refer to this kind of idea is in silico deliberation, which is one way to think about is you could imagine a model that is trained on your preferences and your values, your history, that has been fine-tuned with your supervision to act in ways that you want. And then you can imagine that model then going put in a situation where it coordinates, deliberates with other people's models. And there might be people around the world where you would find it very hard to agree or find some sort of common ground with. But maybe if you had hundreds of years to talk through things, you could arrive at some sort of consensus. But these agents now could effectively do that deliberation and communication and consensus finding on your behalf. And maybe more immediately, if that sounds kind of far off, more immediately, this kind of way of representing human values or communities of people is already being used in a kind of talk to the people tool where diplomats, world leaders, even like organizations. This is even being used in market research, where individuals can from sort of a collective input process distilled through an LLM to represent the sort of shared input of many people, effectively have a conversation or have that community be represented in some of these boardrooms or delegations. And I think the future here is so powerful. We have an opportunity for individual and collective alignment through agents deliberating with our input in a process that I think you can imagine becoming a democratic singularity, not just a technological singularity where advancing technology and artificial intelligence improves on itself and makes these sort of silicone technologies, digital technologies, radically better. But perhaps we, the people, are able to collectively make our human systems radically more powerful, to a point where we are able to achieve the kind of democratic coordination and consensus orientation that has never been possible. And I want to leave you with that. I want to do a quick shout out that we are hiring, and we are looking for partners outside of the US. A lot of our work over the last year has been very US focused, and we are really excited to work with teams, partners, organizations, governments outside of the US to get at this sort of global values question. Feel free to shoot me an email. Thank you.
Thank you, Evan. And through your talk, and thank you for your insightful talk, I think all of us got to learn what collective intelligence really means and why collective intelligence. But what personally struck me was how CIP tries to set and execute and shared goals for the best outcome. And I feel like compared to traditional ways of wisdom of the crowd, I think it really gives power to the people and gives people the power to execute. I think traditionally it was more of listening to citizens' opinions and then letting scientists, the technologists, and all the policymakers to do the rest. And I think this is what makes collective intelligence project extremely meaningful in this time of the history. Now I'd like to open the floor for questions. If any of you have any questions, please raise hand through that reaction button, or you can type in the chat. Maybe while we wait for some questions to be risen, I have several to begin with. So you talked about the constitutional AI, and I wanted to ask a bit about the technical aspect of it. So I was wondering how the Collective Intelligence Project and Anthropic plan to ensure that the fine-tuning of the AI models didn't reinforce existing biases or create new ones. I was wondering the technical aspect of it.
That is a great question. Let me jump back to that bit here. So, yeah, so I think that is why, so if I'm really getting at, could this be reinforcing existing biases? I think one part of that question is the existing biases of people who live in the United States, because that is the sample that we drew from. And that is the key reason why we're looking to expand this process to other regional communities and even other languages, and get value statements from these communities in particular, partially because we believe that most likely there are value statements that aren't represented in like a sample of just people who live in the US, but also the opportunity to find where there is kind of global consensus and how might values from these communities overlap with things from the US, or even have like a very cultural, regional specific flavor, even if they are ostensibly very similar values. There's an opportunity to like have some like ostensibly very similar values represented in a more culturally sensitive and specific way by getting the input directly from the people who live in those communities. So that's one way. I think just the design of the experiment or the process with Anthropic assumed that there would be biases that would be represented in the US sample. And yeah, that's always going to be a challenge until we can effectively get a much broader sample of people.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And I guess that's the reason why there is a mission in the CIP's report and roadmap to expand this research to a more wider geographical area, in which I have another question afterwards, but we received another question in the chat. So Nish-san asked, since I read a paper, more agent is all you need. I'm interested in the power of multiple agents. As of now, however, if I understand correctly, there's no golden standard for how to integrate agents as united one, like simple building. From CI perspective, do you have any insights about this topic? Is the question. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, so yeah, more agents is all you need. That paper and yeah, there is not. It seems like it's the Wild West, to borrow a phrase right now. I think there is not a gold standard. I don't think there's any clear consensus on how to effectively harness multiple agents. But so I can't point you to anything in particular. I think I've been personally doing quite a bit of experimenting with the Microsoft AutoGen framework. And I think that is maybe furthest along in terms of specific tooling. But I think one thing that's missing here that I've been exploring personally is effectively harnessing not just coordination of multiple agents, but allowing more of the wisdom of crowd phenomena to emerge from many agents. And maybe that could look like the democratic, the collective processes that we use today in our human society, or like at the cutting edge. There's you might have heard of quadratic voting. In the US, something that's gaining traction is ranked choice voting. There are other mechanisms for getting collective input that seem to be more effective at arriving at outcomes people want and care about and prioritize than just like a simple vote. What would it mean to harness the power of many agents through a kind of cutting edge voting or deliberation process, and allow this emergent wisdom of a large group of people to be applied to cutting edge models? And that's an area that I'm exploring, and I haven't really seen development yet. I think these models have just gotten good enough that they can start to have this kind of deliberation, but it's wide open, and I think it's an open space for people to experiment and contribute to right now.
Thank you for your response. Is there any other? Yeah, okay. If there is anything else, please comment in the chat. In the meantime, I have another question regarding involving more people in this collective intelligence project. So I think the ethos of CIP and collective intelligence as a whole is involving more people, listening to more people's opinions to balance what's missing, what may be missed in the traditional policymaking. But I think the biggest criticism towards that is that may lead to mobocracy, meaning how there might be a risk of maybe not truthful information to be spread and more bias to be spread. So I guess the biggest opposition comes from people saying how you should include less rather than more people in decision-making process. So what's your response to that? And how does CIP try to combat that problem of misinformation and again, potential for reinforcing traditional biases and many stereotypes?
Yeah, that is a great call out. That the worry about a mobocracy of people kind of overriding maybe minority groups of people, or maybe we collectively put input into something, but we're all collectively misguided and actually supporting something that is very harmful to all of us. So something that isn't well captured in I think this process with the anthropic value elicitation process we did with the US public is there is an opportunity for not just starting with what do you want and asking people at that level, what do you want? And then taking that at face value as the thing that then you're going to train a system or a AI model on. What we're exploring with what I had kind of addressed at the very end, the value elicitation at a global level, is there are methodologies for kind of getting people to a most collaborative headspace, basically. And you can ask questions, get input from people before you get to the fundamental thing you really want, the fundamental piece of data that you actually want from them. You can kind of walk them through like how might you have dealt with a situation? There was a process that one of our partner orgs did, where they were looking at, and I can link the paper, I don't remember the title off the top of my head, where they were looking at how AI models should refer to medical advice, and like vaccines and that sort of thing. And before they got to just the question of how do you want an AI model to address questions about medicine and personal health, they sort of started with questions like, what was the time that you needed help? Or like, can you imagine a scenario where somebody might be looking for medical advice, but they can't get to a doctor, and so they need to refer to a chat? So there's a way to kind of get people to a more collaborative place and a more empathetic place. And I think that's one limitation of our existing kind of ancient collective intelligence technologies, is that in many ways, our society is beautiful and produces incredible things, and in many ways, it's very toxic and harmful and cruel. And I think part of the innovation that needs to happen is figuring out ways to get people not just to like submit their vote on what they want, but to get to a place where they can empathize and they can be feeling like they're collaborative and like they're on a team, or that they have something in common with the people around them. And that's part of the challenge as well.
Thank you. And I've now got two other people raising their hands. So perhaps from Kanai-san.
Oh, hello. Yeah, thank you very much for your talk. I'm sorry I cannot show my face since it's early in the morning for me. Okay. So I've been interested in like AI safety in general, but I felt like there's a lot of kind of extreme ideas which I often encounter on social media, and things like extreme pessimism and optimism, like EA versus ER kind of thing. And but I kind of felt that, like, okay, so in Japan, no, we are not usually very familiar with what's going on in the West, and but somehow I kind of felt there's something kind of off, or okay, I understand arguments from both ends, but at the same time, I felt like things are kind of getting political, and so that way it seems kind of difficult to reach some sort of like agreement. But but I but then this kind of focus on collective intelligence and democracy kind of made me realize maybe what I really care is kind of failure of democracy in the context of technology. So yeah, so but I also feel no, democracy is a very difficult thing to really realize in real society, because um, uh, like individuals do not have enough cognitive capacity to understand everything happening in the world and make a rational decision. So so in that sense, technology could help. So I think I think there's some sort of like a weird situation. So in a way, like probably so the current society, including Japan and elsewhere, relies on the trust in democracy and sort of like free market capitalism. And but now they seem to be in some sort of conflict. So I also run a company myself, but I often feel strange that our like stakeholders have like more influence than my employees about what my company should do. So it's very anti-democratic, and I think that may be kind of noticed before, but not, it wasn't very explicit. So I feel like like this kind of discussion about AI is a kind of like like bigger case of this kind of implicit conflict. And but on the other hand, so I think this kind of thing is mainly happening in tech. But at the same time, I think technology can be used to sort of augment humans to facilitate better democratic decision making as a society. And yeah, so I think in that sense, I feel what this cognitive collective intelligence project is working on has kind of broader implications about how we should kind of coordinate policies across like different stakeholders. So in that sense, I felt like a lot of hope in this project. And yeah, so that's the main thing I wanted to mention. But also I'm involved in the kind of establishment of our kind of nonprofit organization line. And so yeah, so like if there's any way we could work together, I thought that would be fantastic.
Yeah, we would yeah, getting new partnerships is always something we're excited to do. And yeah, I think what you're fundamentally getting at, the kind of pessimism that one can have, and the kind of dissonance of seeing the systems that do exist, the market versus public input or regulation, even employees versus like a board of directors or investors. I think what also gives me hope in this work is that we have an opportunity to sort of expand people's imagination of what kind of technologies are possible and what gets to count as a technology. And if we actually thought of our democratic systems as technologies, we would have innovation labs dedicated to improving our systems of government. We would have funding going into better coordination amongst employees and investors, and we would have tooling that would unlock the power of this kind of like collective input if more people really saw these things as reshapeable and iterable, things that can be improved on and aren't just handed down to us from a legacy of hundreds of years. So yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. I guess like a lot of things were invented in the 19th century, like, in the process of modernization. But I think, like with more technology, I think we are free to imagine like new systems and try to implement and experiment. And yeah, but we don't need to assume that the way the world is now is the only way. But I think there might be, even better ways. And I think exploring that possibility is like really exciting.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Kanai-san and Evan, for your response. I think we've got one more question from Mariyama-san.
Thank you very much for coming today. I'm Ryuichi in AI Alignment Network, and I'm particularly pleased to have you because many of our previous webinar guests said strongly that we should definitely invite someone from Collective Intelligence Project. We should definitely check what they are doing. So it was a fantastic occasion to be able to learn from you. So I have two questions, but I think I'll pick one. It's like a clarification question. In your talk, you talked about how AIs become more capable by combining them using AI agents will be more capable in combination. But next, you talked about in silico deliberation, in which people talk to each other and find a good solution to a problem. So my question is, where does AI agent fit in silico deliberation? Do they join in the discussion as an agent, or are they primarily considered as a means to facilitate discussion and aggregate opinions?
Great question. Yeah, the potential for, so in silico deliberation, agents or AI models deliberating in sort of infinite time on our behalf or even on their own. Who are they representing? Are they representing us? Are they representing their own opinions? And to what end? And I think of kind of two. There's sort of two human purposes that this kind of collective intelligence with agents can serve. And one I think of as like I think the class, when people talk about in silico deliberation, I think they're talking about deliberation on behalf of people fundamentally, but sped up, made more efficient by having agents do it on our behalf. And in that way, we would want strong supervision mechanisms. We'd want to be able to fine tune and develop really strong trust. The agents are representing our values and have some sort of clear transparency into the nature of their deliberation, and probably have like separate agents that sort of go in and supervise and then summarize like what the deliberation was and hold them accountable on our behalf as well. But that's like a really close connection to human values, and we want them to be as tied into our existing values and opinions and beliefs. The second mechanism, or the second function I see this kind of coordination amongst agents serving can be thought of as more of like a generative function. And what would it mean to have agents that maybe have their own beliefs or values, or maybe they're kind of randomly generated, or their beliefs or values are sort of an aggregation of a human community's values, or maybe they represent other living beings. Like, what would it mean to have agents deliberating on behalf of whales or the trees? And in this function, the output of their coordination and deliberation is less of something that we're like, we have a problem and we're trying to solve, and more expanding the imagination of what is possible. What do the trees think? What are things we haven't even thought of, or ideas that no human or team of humans could conceive of, and in that way we could unlock radically powerful generative capacity. But yeah, that's I think two parts that I think get at this question.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, it made my image clearer. So it's not like new very smart guy appearing in the discussion. It's more like he's representing either humans or non-human agents that we should care about. So thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Mariyama-san and Evan. Maybe this would be the closing question. If I could ask, I know that CIP is trying to expand globally, especially in the project of alignment assemblies. I was wondering what us citizens in Japan, those who are interested in collective intelligence, could do, and what kind of cooperative projects you look forward to here in perhaps Japan and wider in East Asia.
Great. So yeah, I think we're beginning the process of a sort of high-level value elicitation from communities around the globe. I think partners in that effort would be quite general, but a lot of our focus is on specifically values for shaping the actions that AI models take. So a group like Align or other AI-focused groups who would be willing to contribute to that process or give input would be really helpful. And then there is kind of a separate effort that I'm not as close to, that Divya on our team is kind of leading, where we're looking at working specifically with governments outside the US. I want to say possibly smaller government entities than Japan, but maybe at like the prefect level or state level, like smaller regional government level, where there might be more willingness to experiment with collective input processes, similar to some of the work that we've done with Taiwan in particular, and their digital ministry. So any connections to government or like non-government organizations that might be willing to run some potentially experimental collective input processes would be really helpful for expanding the places and communities we can work with to run some of these experiments.
Thank you. And once again, thank you, Evan, and all the participants for today's webinar. We're now closing the event, but I think today we got to learn not only the concept of collective intelligence, but also how AI could be used for collective intelligence and how CIP collective intelligence could fuel AI in the coming years, which is a very timely topic. I'd like to share the screen again to introduce the upcoming events for in the coming days. Okay, so perhaps Mariyama-san could say a few words about this event that Align is sponsoring.
Thank you for the occasion. Yes, the Funding the Commons is happening in Tokyo next month, and Align is participating as one of the sponsors, and Audrey Tang and Graham Weil from, in my understanding, who are involved in collective intelligence projects, are also actually coming to Japan and will be sharing their talks. So, this webinar is a really good preparations for our Japanese community to welcome these two distinguished people. Yeah, so thank you.
And just one more, just for those Japanese speakers, there is another upcoming Align webinar series, 7th event of this. And it's about thinking about the technologies, understanding of technology, inviting Mr. Kobayashi, from IA MAS. So if you have time, please join Align webinar. This will take place next Thursday for the July from 5 p.m. Japan time. So thank you again, Evan, for your time, for your precious time, and thank you for the opportunity today.
Thank you very much. I had a lot of fun with all the questions. Thank you.
Thank you.